Have you ever wondered if a toy could remember? If it could carry every hand that ever touched it, every secret it ever heard? Tonight, I'll tell you about a doll that was never meant to exist. A doll that was supposed to make children smile, but instead, it learned how to stare. Distant, ticking clock, whispering static. This is the story of the Cursed Barbie, the doll that shouldn't exist. Imagine a world bathed in pink, a world of dream houses, perfect careers, and endless sunny days. This is the world Mattel built for Barbie, an empire of plastic perfection. For decades, she has been a symbol of aspiration, a blank canvas for a child's imagination, a friend, a confidant. But what happens when the plastic smile doesn't fade? What happens when the painted-on eyes seem to follow you long after the playroom lights go out? Most of us have a Barbie story. Maybe she was a veterinarian, an astronaut, or a pop star. We brushed her hair, changed her clothes, and whispered our deepest wishes into her unhearing ear. We projected our dreams onto her. But did we ever stop to think? What if something was projected back? The official history of Barbie is meticulously documented, from the first swimsuit-clad doll in 1959 to the diverse and inclusive figures of today. Every step is accounted for. Every mold, every design, every limited edition is cataloged. But there are whispers, stories that don't appear in the official archives. Tales shared in hushed tones at slumber parties, typed out in the flickering glow of a late-night internet forum. Stories of a Barbie that is different. They say she was a prototype, a mistake. An early model from the late 60s, crafted with a unique, experimental polymer that was supposed to give her a more lifelike feel. But the formula was unstable, volatile. Workers at the factory complained of strange occurrences. Dolls moving on the assembly line on their own. The faint sound of a little girl's laughter echoing in the empty halls after hours. The project was scrapped, the molds destroyed, and all existing prototypes were ordered to be incinerated. All of them, except one. This is where the official record ends and the urban legend begins. A legend that has haunted collectors and terrified parents for over 50 years. It's the story of a doll that escaped the fire. A doll that found its way into the world, passed from one unsuspecting hand to another. They call her by many names. The Shadow Barbie, the tear-stained doll, the doll that hears. Each owner has a different story, but the details are chillingly similar. It starts subtly, a misplaced accessory. A dress that's different from the one she was wearing before. Then, the doll starts to move. A slight turn of the head when you're not looking. A hand that seems to have shifted its position on the shelf. You dismiss it. It's just your imagination, a trick of the light. But then comes the sound, a soft sigh from the corner of the room. A barely audible whisper that sounds like your own name, spoken on the edge of hearing. The laughter, that same little girl's laughter from the factory, now echoing in your own home. The perfect plastic smile begins to look less like joy and more like a predatory grin. The bright, painted eyes seem to hold an ancient, knowing darkness. They don't just look at you. They see through you. They say the doll feeds on secrets. The more you tell it, the stronger it becomes. It thrives on the anxieties and fears you pour into it, twisting them, reflecting them back at you in the dead of night. It's a vessel, not for dreams, but for nightmares. A perfect plastic parasite. Tonight, we peel back the layers of pink plastic and sunshine. We will journey into the shadows of the dream house and look into the eyes of the doll that stares back. We will uncover the stories of those who owned her and those who were owned by her. We're not just talking about a toy anymore. We're talking about an object that has absorbed a half-century of sorrow, of secrets, of fear. So, turn down the lights, check your own collections, and ask yourself one question. Are you sure you know what's really sitting on your shelf? Join me as we uncover the terrifying truth behind the doll that shouldn't exist. This is the legend of the Cursed Barbie. The factory in 1980s. It began in 1983 in a small manufacturing plant just outside Los Angeles. This was the golden age for Mattel. Their Barbie line was more than just a success. It was a cultural phenomenon. Malibu Barbie, Dreamhouse Barbie, Astronaut Barbie, millions of perfectly crafted, smiling faces were rolling off the line every single week. Destined for the eager hands of children across the country. The factory was a symphony of machinery and precision, a place where dreams were molded from plastic. But then came prototype 58-4A. This wasn't a standard run. It was a limited batch, an experimental design that was supposed to introduce a new, more lifelike shimmer to Barbie's iconic eyes. Something went wrong. Terribly wrong. The batch never passed inspection, flagged for defects that no one could quite explain. One of the quality control workers, a young woman named Lydia, was the first to notice. She said the faces on those dolls were wrong. It wasn't just a simple manufacturing error. The paint, a new formula, didn't seem to dry properly under the heat lamps. It left the smiles looking uneven, almost stretched, as if they were struggling to hold their shape. The eyes, meant to be brilliant and inviting, were slightly off-center, giving them an unnerving, vacant stare. Lydia told her supervisor they looked like they were watching her move through the aisles, their tiny plastic heads seeming to follow her. Her complaints were dismissed. Supervisors told her she was just tired, that the fumes from the new paint were playing tricks on her mind. The night shift was long, and the constant hum of the conveyor belts could make anyone see things. They told her to get some rest, to stop imagining things, but Lydia couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She started avoiding that section of the factory, her hands trembling whenever she had to pass the rejected prototypes quarantined in their gray bins. The other workers started whispering. They noticed Lydia's change in behavior. She grew withdrawn, paranoid. They'd see her staring at the dolls, her face pale, muttering to herself. She insisted their expressions were changing. One day a doll's smile would seem wider, more menacing. The next, its eyes would seem to be looking in a slightly different direction, as if tracking a fly buzzing under the fluorescent lights. Of course, no one else saw it. They just saw a dedicated worker cracking under pressure. But one morning, just as the sun was beginning to rise, a shift change brought chaos. Lydia was found collapsed beside the main conveyor belt, her body limp, her eyes wide with terror. She was whispering something over and over, the same two words, a frantic, breathless mantra that chilled everyone who heard it. She blinked at me. Panic rippled through the management. An incident like this could be a PR nightmare. The entire batch, prototype 58-4A, was immediately slated for destruction. They were recalled from the line, boxed up, and scheduled for the incinerator before they could ever be shipped. Every single doll was accounted for. All except one. A factory worker. A man who had felt sorry for Lydia, but dismissed her fears as delusion, had quietly taken one home for his daughter. He figured, what was the harm? It was just a doll, after all, and his little girl's birthday was coming up. He thought the defect, the strange look in its eyes, made it unique. He said it looked special. He had no idea what he was bringing into his home. He didn't know that the horror of the factory was just the beginning, and that he had just unleashed the legend of the blinking Barbie. The family. The man's daughter, little Valentina, adored her new Barbie. But her mother, Elena, noticed strange things. The doll's platinum hair would untangle itself overnight. Its painted blue eyes seemed brighter, almost watchful, in the dim glow of the hallway light. And once she swore she heard it, humming a lullaby no one in the family knew. One evening, Valentina's father, Javier, heard his daughter talking in her room, not unusual for a 7-year-old playing make-believe, until he realized there were two voices. A faint, second whisper overlays the narration, soft, childlike, slightly distorted. When he slowly pushed open the door, Valentina froze, her back to him. Barbie was sitting upright on the small wooden chair by the window, facing the door. Its tiny plastic arm was raised, as if waving a slow, deliberate hello. After that night, Valentina's behavior changed. She stopped sleeping, claiming the doll got lonely in the dark. She would carry it everywhere, her small hand clutching its waist. When her parents tried to take it, even for a moment, she'd scream. A raw, terrified scream that didn't sound like their daughter. Alina noticed dark circles forming under Valentina's eyes. The girl who once filled the house with laughter now moved like a shadow, whispering secrets to the doll. The strange occurrences escalated. Toys would be found scattered across the floor in the morning, arranged in bizarre, circular patterns. The temperature in Valentina's room would drop suddenly, a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Javier, a practical man who worked at the local factory, tried to find logical explanations. A drafty window, an overactive imagination. But he couldn't explain the humming that now seemed to echo from the baby monitor long after Valentina had fallen into a fitful sleep. One afternoon, while Valentina was at school, Alina decided she'd had enough. Her hands trembling, she grabbed the doll from its place on Valentina's neatly made bed. The plastic felt unnaturally cold. The doll's stretched, uneven smile seemed to widen as she looked at it. Its vacant, off-center eyes stared right through her. With a surge of desperate resolve, she locked it in a wooden chest in the attic and slammed the heavy lid shut. When Valentina came home, she didn't ask where her doll was. She didn't even seem to notice it was gone. Instead, she walked straight to her room, sat on the edge of her bed, and began to hum. It was the same chilling, unfamiliar lullaby Alina had heard the doll humming. Later that night, a scratching sound started. It came from the ceiling, directly above Valentina's bedroom. Scratch, scrape, scratch. Javier went to investigate, flashlight in hand. He pulled down the attic ladder, the old wood groaning in protest. As he climbed, the scratching stopped. The air in the attic was thick and icy. He swept the beam of his flashlight across the dusty space, landing on the wooden chest. The lid was open. The chest was empty. He rushed back downstairs, his heart pounding against his ribs. He burst into Valentina's room, fearing the worst. Valentina was asleep in her bed, breathing peacefully for the first time in weeks. Javier felt a wave of relief wash over him, so powerful it made him dizzy. He scanned the room one last time, his eyes adjusting to the darkness, and then he saw it. In the corner, propped against the wall, sat the Barbie. Its plastic arm was raised again, but this time it wasn't waving. Its tiny painted fingers were curled into a fist, and clutched inside that fist was a single, long strand of Elena's dark hair. He looked back at his sleeping daughter, and a cold dread seized him as he realized the truth. It wasn't that the doll didn't like to be left alone. It was that it had finally found a new home. The Disappearance. On a stormy night in 1986, the family vanished. Police found the front door open, dinner still on the table, and in the middle of the living room, a single Barbie doll sitting upright on the floor. This was the scene that greeted Officer Miller when he first entered the Harris home on October 24th. A house that would become a local legend, whispered only in the darkest corners of town. The call had come from a frantic neighbor, reporting strange noises and an unnerving silence that followed, but nothing could have prepared him for the chilling tableau inside. Steam still rose from the pot roast on the dining table, plates set for three. A half-poured glass of milk sat sweating beside a child's empty chair. It was as if the family had simply evaporated mid-meal. The records were sealed, but one officer claimed to have seen small fingerprints burned into the walls. Officer Miller, haunted by the case until his retirement, never spoke of it publicly. But in a private journal, later found by his grandson, he described something far more disturbing. The fingerprints weren't just on the walls, they were everywhere, scorched into the ceiling above the dining table, seared onto the inside of the refrigerator door, even branded onto the lenses of the father's eyeglasses, left neatly on the nightstand. They were the size of a child's, yet they radiated an impossible heat, leaving blackened, permanent marks on every surface they touched. Forensics was baffled. There was no accelerant, no explainable source of the heat. It was as if a ghost made of fire had walked through the house. Investigators turned the house upside down, searching for any clue, any sign of a struggle or forced entry. But the only thing out of place was that doll. An original 1959 Barbie, pristine, its painted-in eyes staring blankly at the open front door. It sat perfectly centered on the Persian rug, its plastic legs crossed, its smile unwavering. The mother, Sarah Harris, was a known collector, but her prized dolls were all accounted for, locked away in a glass display case upstairs. All except this one. This one didn't belong to her collection. It was an anomaly, an intruder in the domestic scene. Neighbors said they heard a girl laughing that night, but the sound came from inside their walls. Old Mrs. Gable, who lived next door, swore on her life it wasn't the Harris's daughter, Emily. She told police the laughter was different. It was hollow, metallic, like a recording played too slow. It seemed to echo not from next door, but from within her own home, skittering through the vents and behind the plaster. She said it started as a faint giggle around 9 p.m., just as the storm hit its peak. Then it grew louder, more manic, until it ended with a single, sharp, piercing shriek that was swallowed by a clap of thunder. After that, silence, a heavy, suffocating silence that felt louder than the storm itself. Years passed, the house remained empty, a dark monument to the family that was erased. Locals called it the Barbie house. Teenagers would dare each other to touch the front door, but no one ever stayed long. They'd report a sudden, intense feeling of being watched, the smell of burnt plastic, and a faint, girlish whisper carried on the wind. One group of college students who broke in on a dare in the late 90s fled in terror, claiming the doll was no longer in the living room. They said they found it upstairs, sitting on the edge of the little girl's bed, its head twisted completely backward, that plastic smile now a grotesque sneer. The most disturbing account comes from a paranormal investigation team who received permission to film inside the house in 2012. Their audio equipment picked up an electronic voice phenomenon, a single, clear phrase amidst the static. It was a girl's voice, distorted and cold, saying the same thing over and over. Want to play? The team packed up and left when their lead psychic collapsed, screaming that something was trying to get inside her head, something small and plastic and full of an ancient, unholy rage. The house still stands, though it is now condemned, its windows boarded up like closed eyes. The official report lists the Harris family as a cold case, presumed victims of a kidnapping. But those who know the story, those who have heard the whispers and felt the chill from its decaying porch, know the truth is far stranger. They know that on some stormy nights, if you stand across the street and watch the upstairs window, you can sometimes see a tiny silhouette, a perfect plastic figure standing and watching, forever waiting for someone new to play with. The Rediscovery in 2020s. For nearly 4 decades, the story of the cursed doll faded into obscurity, becoming little more than a whisper among niche collectors and late-night forum dwellers. The original was believed to be lost forever, destroyed, or simply hidden away from the world, but some things refused to stay buried. Decades later, in the summer of 2022, a struggling artist named Liam Carter was scrolling through a second-hand marketplace app, looking for cheap props for a project. It was there he found a strange listing, a seller clearing out an old storage unit, advertised an odd vintage 1980s doll for just $10. The pictures were blurry, the description vague, but something about its vacant smile caught Liam's eye. Liam thought he'd found a unique, creepy prop for his art. He arranged to pick it up the next day, not knowing he was about to stumble into a nightmare. The doll was handed to him in a stained, grease-spotted paper bag. Its platinum blonde hair was matted, and its once vibrant pink dress had faded to a sickly, pale peach. Its eyes were the most unsettling part, perfectly blue, but they seemed to follow him with an unnerving stillness. Turning it over in his hands, he noticed a faint, almost invisible series of numbers etched into the plastic just below its neck, 58 to 4A. He took the doll back to his small studio apartment and placed it on a high shelf, intending to use it for a photo shoot later that week. first night, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But the second night, things began to change. Liam was woken at 3:15 a.m. by a sharp metallic scratching sound coming from the corner where the doll sat. He flicked on the lights, his heart pounding in his chest. The room was silent, everything exactly as he'd left it. He chalked it up to the old building's pipes and went back to sleep. The next night, it happened again. This time, the scratching was louder, more insistent. It sounded like a small animal desperately trying to claw its way out of a metal box. Liam sat bolt upright in bed, a cold sweat breaking out across his forehead. He stared into the darkness, straining his ears. The scratching stopped as suddenly as it had started, replaced by a new sound. A soft, barely audible giggle, like that of a little girl, but distorted and thin, as if coming through an old, crackling radio. Within a week, Liam's life had unraveled into a waking horror. He started experiencing crippling sleep paralysis, waking up unable to move, a heavy pressure on his chest. In these terrifying moments, he would see a small, shadowy figure standing in the corner of his room, right by the shelf. The figure never moved, but he could feel its gaze on him, cold and malevolent. His phone began to malfunction in bizarre ways. It would randomly play old-fashioned children's nursery rhymes in the middle of the night, the music tinny and warped. He'd find dozens of blurry, out-of-focus photos in his camera roll that he had no memory of taking, all of them pointed at the empty space on the shelf where the doll sat. The doll itself was never in the frame, but he knew it was the subject. The breaking point came one Tuesday evening. Liam was working late, trying to ignore the gnawing dread that had become his constant companion. He heard a sudden, loud crash from his living area. Rushing in, he found a heavy framed painting had fallen from the wall. The glass shattered across the floor. But that wasn't what made his blood run cold. Lying in the center of the mess, completely unscathed, was the doll. It had been on a shelf clear across the room. There was no logical way for it to have gotten there. As he stared, frozen in disbelief, the doll's head slowly, almost mechanically, tilted to one side. Its painted-in smile seemed to widen, twisting into a grotesque, mocking grin. Liam scrambled backward, his breath catching in his throat. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that he had to get rid of it. But he was also beginning to realize that the doll might not want to leave. The return. Weeks turned into months, and the digital footprint of the haunted Barbie, prototype 58-4, vanished. Online forums that once buzzed with terrified speculation fell silent. The listing was gone. The seller, anonymous, fell. It was as if the internet itself was trying to forget the story of Marianne, the collector who disappeared, leaving only the doll behind. Then, a new username popped up on a niche vintage toy collector's board, Heirloom Hunter 88. The profile was sparse, created only hours before the first post. The message was simple, almost naive. Found this strange Barbie at an estate sale. Anyone know what 58-4A means? It gives me the creeps. Attached were new photos. The doll, propped against a floral bedspread, looked identical. The same vacant stare, the same faint scratches on its plastic cheek, the same chilling engraving on the back of its neck. The community erupted. Old threads were resurrected, screenshots were shared, and warnings screamed across the screen. Get rid of it. That's the cursed doll. Don't be the next one. Heirloom Hunter, 88. A young man named Leo seemed amused by the hysteria. He saw it as a game, a fun piece of internet lore attached to his lucky find. He bragged about the free spooky story that came with his $20 purchase. Against a flood of dire warnings, Leo decided to conduct his own experiment. He wanted to debunk the myth, to prove it was all just a campfire story for the digital age. He set up a live stream, positioning a high-definition webcam directly in front of the doll, which he placed on his nightstand. He titled the stream, Debunking the 58-4, a myth, 24/7 doll watch. For the first few nights, nothing happened. Thousands tuned in, watching the static image of the Barbie. It's painted in lines, staring blankly into the lens. The chat was a mix of skepticism and nervous anticipation. Leo would pop in periodically, mocking the ghost hunters and making jokes about the doll's fashion choices. He was becoming a minor internet celebrity, the brave debunker. But on the fourth night, things began to change. Viewers noticed subtle shifts, a flicker in the lighting that the webcam couldn't explain, a shadow in the corner of the room that seemed to elongate and retract on its own. Leo dismissed it as pixelation, bad internet, anything but the alternative. One night, he decided to leave the doll in a sealed glass display case he'd bought specifically for it, set his live stream to record any motion-detected events, and go to bed. At 3:14 a.m., the motion sensor triggered. The footage, later reviewed by thousands of horrified viewers, showed the glass case, which Leo had locked, beginning to vibrate. A low hum, barely audible, grew into a distinct, high-pitched frequency. Then, the doll, it slowly turned its head toward the camera. Its plastic neck joint, which should have been stiff, moved with an unnatural fluidity. A sharp, metallic creak echoed in the silent room. Static distortion flooded the audio feed, a sound like grinding teeth. The livestream camera abruptly cut out. The next morning, Leo was gone. His apartment door was locked from the inside. Police found no signs of a struggle, no forced entry. Only one thing was found on his bed, the doll sitting upright in the center of the pillow, with a single strand of dark brown human hair tied tightly around its neck. The listing for that same prototype reappeared online a week later. Same photos, same scratches, same engraving, 58-4A. Disclaimer. This story is inspired by online urban legends and creepypasta. It is a work of fiction intended for entertainment and atmospheric horror. There is no verified evidence that such a doll ever existed, but legends always start somewhere. Maybe it's just a story. Maybe it's just another internet rumor about a plastic smile gone wrong. Perhaps the tales of whispers from the dream house and the eyes that follow you in the dark are nothing more than childhood fears, given a new, more sinister form by the endless corridors of the internet. It's easy to dismiss it all, to laugh at the idea of a mass-produced toy holding a grudge. It's painted in cheerfulness, hiding a deep, malevolent consciousness. We tell ourselves that plastic and vinyl cannot harbor a soul, cannot remember the hands that played too roughly, or the secrets whispered in confidence during late-night sleepovers. We assure ourselves that the figure standing silently on the shelf is just that, a figure, inanimate and harmless. But then, you hear it, a faint, almost imperceptible sound from the other room, a tiny shuffle, the rustle of synthetic fabric. Your mind races, trying to find a logical explanation. The house settling, the wind, an old pipe groaning under pressure. But a colder, more primal thought worms its way into your consciousness. You'll remember the stories, you'll remember the warnings, and you remember that you're not alone in the house. You brought her home. After all, she was just too pretty to leave behind at that dusty old thrift store, wasn't she? Her perfect plastic face seems to be smiling a little wider now, a little more knowingly. The light catches her glass eyes in a way you've never seen before, and for a terrifying second, you could swear they just moved. You could swear they're looking right at you. The air grows cold. The silence in your home is no longer comforting, but heavy, filled with an unspoken, waiting presence. Maybe, just maybe, there's still one doll out there waiting for someone curious enough to bring her home. Do you still think toys can't remember?